So last time we talked about subjectivity, and I kind of talked about how I read that C.S. Lewis quote where he read from the textbook, and it's, the students are taught, you observe something and you have an emotional reaction. Well, that's just your feelings. It's not really important. So I think that has been a detriment to a lot of people, like to people in general, but especially to artists, because that's where we operate from. So tonight we're going to start off with subjectivity and how it's interdependent with creativity. So the first thing I have here, you've probably heard it all your life and talked to you by your teacher, your mom, be yourself. And you hear it on the after school specials, just be yourself. And I think people try to sell that to you, like they don't really believe in it, but they know it's true. But I think most people hear that and they're like, yeah, I want that. But yeah, it's never going to happen. But I think one of the first most important things about creativity is you must be yourself. And kind of related to what I said about that, subjectivity not being valued, I think the problem with most people and most artists is people see themselves as common, regular, generic, average, ordinary, status quo, standard, normal, mediocre, nothing special. So then if your subjective view at looking at the world is related to your creativity, then by default you think that your creative ideas are common, status quo, ordinary. Because if you're taught, oh, your opinions, your viewpoints, your emotional, your subjective doesn't matter, then as soon as you get that thought in your head, once you try to create something, your creative physical things that you make with your hands, you're like, oh, this doesn't matter, it's unimportant. And so going back to what I did last week, for you guys who weren't here, I said, what's the definition of creativity? And I pulled off the first poster, and it was just a blank poster. I was like, there is no universal definition of creativity. The only creativity that matters is what comes from you as an individual. Because I used this diagram last week to talk about if we were all looking at something objective, then we would all get the same answer. So in this case, if we're all looking at creativity and it's exact the same, then it's really inefficient. Why, if we're all going to arrive at the same answer of creativity, do we all need to exist? What's going to set it apart? So you might as well just have one person be the creative person if we're all going to look at creativity and get the same answer. So by default, creativity has to be your specific, unique, individual outlook on the world. Creativity that has an objective, limited definition is not creative at all, because creativity, I think, inherently is full of variety, choice, options. And if we're all pulling from the same pool, like I said, it's inefficient. So subjectivity is what makes the world a colorful place to live, a rainbow, a richer tapestry of viewpoints. And this is the only way that subjectivity and creativity can work, is if every human being is allowed to be fully him or herself to the fullest extent of whatever that means in that unique capacity. I like this, the ability to offer what no one else has the ability to offer. To me, that's amazing, to think that each one of us in this room can do something that the other one can never do. Like, that is an incredible thought. And so then I have here, I said this last week, we all have a monopoly on ourselves, something only you can do. So then I have the Bernard dollar, creativity, talents, dreams, desires. If this, in my creative world, I have the Bernard dollar and I'm passing it out. Only I have the reign over that type of currency. I have here, you are the only person who can be you. Think about that. No one else in this room can be you. You have the monopoly. What's up? Come on in. So, you are the only person who has the ability to be you. To me, that's the easiest job in the world. It's like you don't have to do anything other than be. Just rest. You don't have to try. And people nowadays want to do things easy. Well, why not do this? This is the simplest, most easiest thing you can do, is just to be. So here I think right now there's an attack or an antitrust case being brought against our monopoly. People are trying to come after us and our unique perspective and way of looking at life. So just, using the metaphor of monopoly, and people are trying to sue us for being unique and original. They want us to be robots. Emotions are considered invalid, like I read from the Abolition of Man quote. And then it was interesting, last week I was talking to my friend Elizabeth, and she was saying how she had to type up this email to someone, and she was being respectful and saying, thank you for all your help, but I have to express this part of me that just feels like you haven't done your part enough. And so we both got into this conversation about over the past year how we both have felt like we've started to step up and say what we feel to people and be like, look, I feel this way, and I had to let you know that. And then I realized in that moment that I think a lot of times some people probably have an easier time than others, but I think a lot of times we don't step up and speak up for ourselves because we think, oh, these emotions aren't really valid. I shouldn't feel this way. I'm not allowed to have this kind of feeling. They're right. And I think it goes back to that quote, the guy who said, I have sublime feelings about this waterfall. Oh, you're not saying anything important. That's just your emotions. So even beyond art and creativity, I think just in how we deal with people and relationships and business, it has affected our ability to stand up and say, hey, this part of me counts. This part of me is important too, not just ration in how I think, but how I feel too. And like I said, I always like to relate this larger context, sort of cultural things that we already kind of see. So I think, the most classic example I can think of is, husband and wife, and how often women say, they don't feel validated in their emotions. So I think a lot of times as human beings, we're like this, I think we're as a collective, sometimes we're like a collective wife as humanity. Like, we want to feel validated in our emotions, but people don't allow that to happen. We're saying, I'm an artist, this is how I feel, this is what I want to do in life. Yeah, it's not really important. Go to the factory, work, get this kind of job. Let's see. So down here I couldn't think of a Greek title for it, but I called it two options. So here I have this diagram of this completely colorful, unique human being and individual. And I have specific. And to the right, I have generic person or a robot. And I think that's the first option that people try to get us to do. To not be ourselves, just to be this sort of cookie cutter, abstract version of a person. And if we can't do that, then we go down to the second one. And instead of being yourself, you try to be somebody else. So in either case, we're trying to not be ourselves. Either we're trying to be an idealistic person of what people have decided we should be, or we see somebody else who we think is really cool and like, how come I'm not that person? Rather than valuing the unique monopoly that is within yourself. We're trying to be somebody else's monopoly. And you literally cannot be someone else. So you might as well just be yourself, because it's never going to happen. And like I said, the easiest thing you can do is to be yourself. I put here at the bottom cover songs. I know some people like cover songs. I think it's all about the motivation. I have this personal thing, sort of like Evan, with what we were discussing about Richard. I have this personal thing about cover songs of myself. But even besides that, whenever somebody gets on stage and I see them doing a cover song and it's not like they're like, oh, I was really inspired by this song and I want to do this new interesting version of it that's, from my perspective. I just get really irritated because I feel like they're saying, my music isn't worth enough, so I got to play something that other people accept in order to be liked. And maybe it's because I remember people in my family, like when I would play the piano, they'd be like, when are you going to play Beethoven and Bach? Like, people want to hear that stuff first before they hear your stuff. So maybe I kind of internalized that and got angry. But I just don't understand why you have to be somebody else in order to be accepted.
That's not being somebody else. That's just, doing what gets your name out there. And sometimes you're just not good composers. And so they resort to playing other people's music, not because they don't want to. You're just not as talented as yourself.
Well, like I said, I think the motivation is there. It depends, I think, the motivation. If you are genuinely saying, I love this Beethoven song, and I'm not a composer, and I want to play this. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But a lot of times you see people at these open mics. Like, I've heard people get up and say, yeah, my songs aren't that great, so I'm going to start off with somebody who's a really good songwriter. And I'm like, well, then why do I want to listen to you?
And the worst part was, if it's the same guy that was there the night I was there thinking you were talking about Mudhouse, his covers weren't even really good.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, and if you don't believe that your songs are good enough, then like step outside of the box of what you think songs are, or how you think you should express yourself. Because like what you're saying is that we all have something in us that is worth expressing. So if you think that your songs aren't worth expressing, then there must be something else in you that is.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I had a friend once, I think my friend made a good point. He said, why do I want to listen to this generic cover version of you doing a half job when I could just listen to the real thing? It's like I might as well go home and put on a CD and have an enjoyable experience than hear you like destroy this masterpiece. So that's what I'm mainly talking about. I think the internal motivation for why people get up and perform songs versus never do a cover song. Because I love Beethoven, and somebody wants to play Beethoven, Bach, or any of this stuff. And there's some cover songs I heard people do. I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. But I think a lot of times it's not the case.
Well, the flip side though is like I don't do a lot of cover songs, but it's because I don't have the discipline to sit down and learn other people's music. Seriously, like I mean that is the truth, you know. And I'm not as good a guitarist as I could be because of that. Because if I continue to only play my stuff, then I'm never stretched outside of myself.
Yeah, but you can do.
I'm like the poet who never reads poetry.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And I think it ties into what a lot of people brought up last time. Having a foundation. Like if you're gonna do cover songs, like it's a foundation to springboard you up, but not to stay in there and just I'm the Mick Jagger cover band. And it's like great, we already have a Mick Jagger.
Hey, there was a Beatles cover band in August, and that's because the Beatles died. We need to.
I saw that.
Some people can
They're good.
afford
They
it.
they were very good.
Well, here's here's something I was writing about. I didn't get into these charts, and it's probably gonna come up later. But okay, I was thinking about Houdini. So let's say Houdini, he's this great magician, and he comes out with this Houdini box set of you can be your own magician. So lots of kids go to the store and they're like, yeah, I want to be just like Houdini. To me, that's more of like a childlike innocence, love motivation. Like, yeah, I like Houdini and I kind of want to be like him. But they're not saying like, I want to be him. Like some people, like, they want to be Houdini. They want to be that person. First problem is you just can't, period. It's impossible. Second, what you're saying is I want to be this person who worked really hard to like solidify his act and nuance and details and really make a name and carve out who he is. I just want to go take that. So first you don't want to work hard and you want to do something that's impossible. So if you're going to do all that work to like try to be somebody else, why not just do the opposite and rest and be yourself?
But I think it goes back to what you just said in the beginning too, that when you're being subjective and creative, you have to be yourself. And the first thing that came to my mind is know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in the cases that you're describing, people don't know who
Yeah.
they are. They have an identity crisis creatively. So they're going around picking up other people's identity.
Yep.
Pasting them on themselves. It's a real honest place to be,
At the same time,
to be yourself.
I love to take things from other artists, like little bits and pieces. I love doing that. Like, if I see a good idea, I'm going to use it. I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to say, okay, how can I rework that? And use it my own way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, like sometimes I'll hear something and like my first reaction might be, oh, I can't use that anymore because they already used that, so I can't do that now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not, at the same time, like in the desire to be like really original. If I were to like try to figure out some like chord progression that no one had ever used ever, It's not happening. Exactly. And even if it were, it would. What would that be? I mean, I don't know.
What's your medium of expression?
Whatever. Anything.
Music, voice.
Music, art, writing. I like doing a lot of stuff. Yeah.
I think that
Everything except focus.
Everything except focus. Yeah. Exactly.
when I write poetry, or I used to, I haven't written. I think I burnt myself out. But anyway,
when I first started writing, not a lot of what I did, but some of the exercise that I'd read the poets that I really liked. And there's this method called talking back to the poem. And I wasn't really, there was whatever element of that poem that I really liked, whether it was the first line, whether it was the outline of the poem, whether it's particular words they used, I would talk back to that poem. And I think that's what Bernard's saying. Like, I wouldn't try to copy that poem. I would say, whoa,
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that poem, and I'm going to do something similar to that, but it's going to have Ebony written all over it.
Out of inspiration.
Yeah, it was more of an
Sort of like a
inspiring.
conversation with.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a conversation
Yeah,
with the
absolutely.
grade, right, as opposed
Absolutely.
to, I wanna be the next Maya Angelou, which I don't wanna be, but I've created some talking back poems or some inspired by her, and I was like, oh, I think that's damn good. I think she should read Bob poems.
She said it to her.
We'll let it pass.
I told that's how I felt in school. I was like, how come we read these poems in this book? Why is this guy in here? Like, I got some raps in my notebook that should go in this book.
You don't do enough marketing, Bernard.
Hung Mun is gonna be the rational voice of this whole group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your medium of expression?
Talking.
He plays guitar.
But you just made me think of something. I remember I was in high school and I was getting a ride from my friends on the wrestling team, and these guys were like, there was this guy on our team named Jupiter Wilson, like 300 pounds. Like his name is Jupiter. Yeah,
Wow.
he was like
Everybody's so happy.
300 pounds, 6 foot something, like huge. And we played on the offensive line, defensive line in football. So everybody would like, you know,
Orbit Jupiter.
orbit you. So when like scouts would come
That's
to look,
funny.
they would look at him on the game film, and then my coaches would be like, "Yeah, when the scouts were there, they'd be like, who's that short guy next to Jupiter?" So then, you know, everybody would come to me and be like, "Bernard, you want to be the next Jupiter Wilson?" I was like, "No, I want to be the first Bernard Hankins." And everybody was like, "Oh," like it just came to me. But I think that's how most of us,
Yeah.
like, we're taught to like achieve to somebody else. It's like, who do you think the first person who is considered the milestone was? Like, oh, I'm gonna be the
next
first.
Michael Jordan.
Yeah. And like I think what Ebony's saying, like there's a sense of being inspired and influenced. And like I said, that Houdini idea to me is like the little kids, they see him like, I want to be like him, but they don't want to be him. You know, they're inspired by him.
You could want that all you want, but if your creative expression has never existed before, you can forget it. You know what I'm saying? I haven't really seen, or I read other poetry, but I don't know. It's different if you come from a different vantage point.
Well, I don't mean necessarily be like, you know, like the phrase was like be like Mike. I don't even mean like Michael in. It's just more of like you're not trying to be that specific
yeah, I know,
person.
But some people, I agree with you, but I'm saying some people do. Their creative expression is inspired by people that exist, and they're like a protege to them, and it's all right because
Yeah.
they may be taking it to the next level.
Yeah, I mean,
But what I'm saying also is that then there are those outliers who, no matter who they read, their stuff still comes out unique and different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They still can't copy anybody because it's not the way the inspiration comes through them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there is a truth that, like, everybody's not going to be a Michael Jordan. Everybody's not going to be a Picasso. And we'll get into some stuff later that deals with, like, identity that should put you at rest. Because your whole goal is to be yourself. And to me, the other component of creativity is to have fun. It's not to strive to be anybody. It's just to enjoy where you are and have fun and play. All right, so the next chart is one of a kind versus one size fits all. So the first thing I have here is like we all have this desire for individuality and specificity. So we haven't got to this part in the book yet, but he talks about this idea of design. And he was interviewing the guy from Sony, and the Sony CEO said, yeah, when I took over Sony products, I thought to myself, okay, what's going to set Sony apart? If we come out with a DVD player, it's probably going to have a play button like everybody else. It's probably going to have rewind like everybody else. It's probably going to be about the same price. Like, what's the only thing that can really make us stand out in the store? And he said,
Logo.
yes, the red logo. Hung Mun is marketing, so he knows all the things to get people's eye. But he said design.
Right.
It's like the only thing that is going to catch our eye. You know, all these VCRs, they look square, but then you see the one that's like all curved and like ergonomic to your hand and like, ooh, look at the flashy blue lights and the like that kind of stuff gets our attention. So I'm gonna go into what that means for us as people. So then down here I have customization and specialization. He kind of talks about this too, in the idea like, you know, we buy an iPod, but then we want to make it specific to us. So you get this gray metallic iPod that you buy in the store, but then you want to buy the slip cover, the skin that goes over it, so you feel like it's mine. This is Bernard's iPod, not just the iPod, but Bernard's iPod. So it goes from the generic to the specific. And we all want that in cars or toasters or VCRs. Because until you buy your, one thing he said the industry for like the slip covers and all these accessories is its own industry beyond the iPod itself. Mm-hmm. So that tells you a lot about how we as human beings have this desire for uniqueness and specificity. Same price. Everything. Only thing that's going to set it apart is uniqueness, because iPod's going to be the same for everybody else. It's going to look like everybody else's until you start buying these little accessories. So then last time I told this idea about the shirt and the guy who was saying, you know, we don't buy a shirt based upon price alone, but there's so many other components. So taking the idea of shirt again, just as a metaphor, I think a lot of people, we've been taught to see life, if life was a shirt, we have this one size fits all. Everybody just grab the same shirt and wear it. There's no sense of buying that unique shirt that is made just for you. And so then I say we customize everything. iPods, you know, BK, Burger King, have it your way. Make a sandwich just for you. Special order this, custom fitted, special order just from France, just the way you want it. Everything is customized to us, but we don't do that with our very life. You know, we don't customize our very life path that we want to go on. We kind of take this generic, this is what you do. You go to school, college, job, family, house, retire. Like there's no sense of, well, what if I don't want to get married first? What if I want to travel? What if I want to start a business, then get married? But, you know, there's this path that's been set forth by us that we kind of just thrust into, and then we're on the path, and then our parents are like, how come you're not going down the path? They're like, well, I don't want to go down this path. I have my own path. But we've been taught that this is the way life is going. So we've taken this generic route. We haven't all taken it, but this is what it's trying to be sold to us. So then I have this little comic cartoon down here. It's like, you know, end of life sale. Everything must go because, yes, life is going to be over. Life is a sale. Everything's going out of business. So you got one chance to buy a shirt. So we have us in the middle. It's like, what should I buy? Millions in stock. Buy now. Predictable, safe, expected, generic, similar life path. The price tag is easy, proven results, little failure, nothing special. Boring, yes. Then we have this shirt over here, which is nice and colorful and unique and special for you. Only one made and only one left. You know why? Because it's just for each one of you. So it's adventurous, it's risk, it's unknown, it's unique, amazing life path. It's price tag, hard work. You have to try and fail, but it'll be worth it. So I think if we take this idea of we do everything for ourselves, customize iPods, what we eat, what we wear, but why don't we do this for our life? We're very specific, unique individuals. Our life itself should be that unique.
Come on now.
Yeah, Ebony, we're gonna make Ebony present. She took a life path around the world. I'll let her tell it. So I have these comics again.
Woo, American Dream. Woo. What?
We have one fan of the American Dream. All right. So on this side I have the American Dream. So keeping that idea of specificity in mind. Here is the American Dream. Nothing wrong with the American Dream. If you want to follow the American Dream, the only thing is, does it line up with your personal desires, goals, values, dreams? I think the problem with the American Dream is that, you know, we're a specific human being, but then we try to connect with this abstract general concept. It's like, oh, get a big house, get a nice car, get a good job, get all the newest gadgets. I mean, that stuff is great, but it's not really tailored to you. Because then you're over here, you're like, wait, I just want to live in an apartment. I actually don't want a car. I like to bike. Sure, I like a good job, but I also want to travel. Yeah, gadgets are cool. I like iPods, but I really much rather live simple. So it's like you have all these parts that are unique to you, and you're trying to figure out how do they connect with this American dream. And it's because it's not tailor-made for you. It's just abstract. Follow this, follow that, and then you go find it, and you're not happy because it wasn't exactly what you wanted. It was kind of this, I mean, I think you can use this as a guidepost. It's like, yeah, you're probably going to get married. You're probably going to buy a house. You're probably going to buy something when you get that house. But no one can tell you exactly what path to follow. And I compare that to the ideal celebrity. I mean, similar concept, just dealing with people instead of the American dream. You know, so there's this ideal person we're supposed to like out there. You know, he's supposed to be handsome and rich and popular and famous. So, I mean, it sounds good in theory, but you're like, okay, I've met this person, he's a celebrity. He's Tom Cruise. He's handsome, he's rich, he's popular, he's famous. But wait, does Tom Cruise like to cook? I like cooking. I want somebody who wants to cook. You know, he's rich. That's great. But does he like biking or hiking? You know, same thing.
He's a messed up Scientologist.
Is he too?
Oh, yeah.
Wait. Oh, Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking Tom Hanks for a second.
Oh.
I like Tom Hanks. Yeah.
Sorry.
So there's all these specific things to you as a unique individual that you like. And it doesn't matter if that person is a celebrity. Like, if they don't connect with you on that level, it's not going to be a match. So American dream, love life, they got to connect, you know. So then on this side, the phrase I use is that a lot of people have traded their personal dreams for the American dream. So they've traded in what they want for this abstract idea. So I got this guy here with, you know, my dreams, and he's like, well, should I trade this for one of these generic store-bought American dreams? So it looks good to the outside world. When people see you get that house and that, you know, big job and everything looks perfect, yeah, from the outside it looks good, but on the inside you're probably suffering because you're not doing what you want to do. You know, with the themes I was talking about last week, industrial revolution, robots, you know, it's a mass-produced idea. Like, we're not mass-produced people, so we're not going to connect with mass-produced dreams or people. I've heard people use the phrase, like, you know, there's not a perfect person out there, but there's a perfect person for me. And I think that's a good, when I heard that, I was like, it's a really good phrase. So yeah, you're not going to find a human being that's everything you ever wanted, but they're going to be a pretty good fit. You're not going to find the perfect job and the perfect life, but it's going to be a really good fit. So you got to find that person and that life that when you connect with them, you know that it's a match. And it's never going to be, like, nobody, I think that's the bottom line. Nobody is perfect. So you can keep searching all day long, and you're always going to be disappointed. So you got to find that person or that dream that, you know, fits well. You know, like, that's just, you know, similar thing. What? Yeah, I mean, some people think that they have their you know, girlfriend or wife, and they're thinking, oh, there's somebody else out there who's perfect for me. I should trade her in. But again, there's no perfect person. The what? What's that?
What is it that any person is going to give you 80% of what you need, and what people, that 20% you're not getting from your spouse, you trade the 80 for the 20 you think you want, and you end up only getting 20 when you were with the 80.
One of the things I was thinking about, and you know, you probably even anticipate this from me, like, you know, like talking about the book that I was just reading. I just finished this book. It's this really great sociological study of folks born from like the mid-70s to the late 90s, and how on every level of metric we're the most selfish, narcissistic, and more goal-oriented but miserable generation that's existed in America. And so, like, I've been really wrestling with this because I have this ideal. It's called Generation Me. And so I wrestle with this because I think I've just finally come to a point where I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. This because I do believe on this, like, this hand that, like, man, God has made each one of us unique, and so we do have dreams and hopes that are unique to each one of us that we need to pursue. But can you do that in a way that's not selfish? And that's where I'm like, you know, I'm trying to look back at my own life because I'm like, you know, I've pursued dreams, but man, my dreams are helping other people, you know. And so, like, how is it that, and as I think, especially, like, you can take, you know, this idea of you know, this great individual, but when you held it in the ideal of, like, okay, well, what sort of life are we as, if we're a Christian, like, what are we called to be? Like, I'm saying, like, yeah, you're uniquely equipped to create beauty in a way that no other person on earth can create it. You're uniquely equipped to serve other people, you know, and you're creating not for your sake, but for the sake of others, for the sake of bringing about more beauty in this world, you know. And so, like, making sure we're holding this idea of selflessness and humility, at the same time as, like, I see it as my duty to pursue who I am to be, for the sake of the world, for the sake of others, and for the sake of the kingdom of God. And the beauty of that is, in doing that, I will find my happiness. But if I go out seeking happiness and fulfillment, I don't know that I'll ever find it. You know? Yeah, I've just been wrestling with that.
Yeah, that's
because I watched a webinar. I work in human resources, so I listened to a webinar today. It was helping us to deal with generations within the workplace. And, you know, the thing that I could say to you about that, because you talked about a couple of things, but I'm a boomer. I'm a baby boomer. So you have to give yourself a break, because generations have certain traits because of what the world was like when they lived. And so, being a boomer, you know, everybody everywhere, even in New York and New Jersey, could leave their doors unlocked and their cars unlocked. There was not this pursuit of my individual, you know, sort of good. But I say give yourself a break, because your generation was exposed to the Vietnam War, you know, to the realization that that the earth is not going to be able to sustain us, you know, with the way that we're consuming things. You know, your generation has been faced with a lot of like reality that my generation didn't. I got to really be a kid. You know what I'm saying? So, and then also, my generation are your parents. You know, because I'm a late boomer. You know, late towards the end of the boomer generation. But we also created that in you all too, because during the 80s, when we were very prosperous, we lavished things on your generation. You know, so
it's good to understand why we got there. But we don't have to stay in a place of selfishness.
So the last point I wanted to make is, you can't break out of your generation. You can strive to be more godly and more godlike and have those traits. But could it be that your generation has a specific purpose in being the way that it is? You know what I mean? Like, maybe the individualistic, because that was one of the things they mentioned, that your generation is very individualistic. But see, also in that individualism is the ability to, we see your generation as being very, very intelligent, and being able, you know, you all know things and are exposed to things like technology that we weren't, and we have to, like, run to keep up with you all. So could it be that individualism, like for instance, Apple is a very, Mac, you know, Jobs is a very creative person, but not in the sense of what we think of creativity as being. So I guess what I'm saying is temper your struggle with why did you make my generation this way, Lord? What is the purpose?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we all have a different perspective.
Right. I just don't see selfishness in the gospel anywhere. Like there's,
Right.
you know.
And I use individualism.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, rather
Yeah.
than selfishness.
It's like a misinterpretation of a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Individualism is one thing, and that's like just, and that's what I'm saying. Like the be yourself is a great message. I think our generation can hear that.
Right.
And take it to a place that's not, it's
Yeah,
not good.
absolutely.
Right.
And so like when we're communicating this idea of being ourself, be yourself, not for the sake of yourself, but for the sake of others and who you've been made to be in the image of God. Yeah, that sort of thing. It's
And like
letting the
the
gospel
personal
speak
dreams.
into cultural realities. you know?
Yeah, like if you're gonna go after the personal dreams, make sure they're God-given personal dreams. You
Yeah,
know, like I'm
yeah.
not just going after what I want, or what the other people want me to want. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
neither of those. But I think what you mean when you're saying personal dreams is that the dreams that God planted in you
Yeah, definitely.
that are unique to you because He wanted you to be that way for His people.
Totally, yeah.
Right. I think that's great.
Some of the stuff you said is later in the charts if we get there.
Sorry.
No, I'm just see, interpretation. Everybody interpreted the joke. All right. So now I have monopolies and masterpieces. So I already talked about us being monopolies. So let's see where I want to start. So we're all a monopoly. And I only thought about that idea a few weeks ago, but I love it.
It's a
Well,
good
that's
idea.
original.
It's a very good idea.
You came up with that?
I've never heard
Well, I
that.
guess it's high five.
You should coin that.
I-
Monopoly on.
I have a plan to.
And to know that other people have a monopoly on being there.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't
That's
be
so important.
who-
Yeah.
I can't be that person because they have that monopoly.
Hey, let me
Yeah.
write the forewords to one of your books so I can become famous.
See, Kung Won trying to get on my coattails.
Marketing.
Marketing, yeah. Okay, so Monopoly. You are the only person. This is more of an intangible thing, maybe some tangibles, that has this combination of talents, gifts, resources, personality, dreams, desires, outlook, passions, ideas, expressions, environment, family, upbringing. You are the only person on all of Earth that has that set of that specific combination. So I have here, you are one person, but when you are unraveled, there's many complex layers. There's this band that I love called Sleeping at Last, and there's a song called Needle and Thread. And he has this one line in the song, he says, "You were a million years of work that God said with his angels with needle and thread." And just that idea of you taking a million years to be stitched and sewn and put together piece by piece, vertebrae by vertebrae, no copying of parts. It wasn't like vertebrae copy. It was like, nope, each vertebrae is molded by hand and then put together. So that ties into we ourselves are masterpieces. Like we're creative people who like to think we create and build masterpieces, but we ourselves are living masterpieces. And that guy who wrote the song, he always seems to use this imagery of weaving and thread, and it makes me think of the verse that says, we're fearfully and wonderfully made and knit together. So I don't know, maybe he got it from there. Let's see. So then this last part I think is very interesting. So I was teaching this other class, and I was talking about how, as artists, we're the kind of people, like, we'll do something just for doing it. If we have this book we're working on, we go into our little room, we close the door, we'll write. We want somebody to see it, sure, it'd be great. But if nobody ever sees it, we're happy just doing it for us. Like, I just want to write this book. I love coming up with these characters. I love these lines. And so then later I was talking about how there's this one, I think it's Corinthians, I can't remember the verse, but it says, like we're God's handiwork or craftsmanship. So I was just talking about how we ourselves are God's art. And so then my friend who was in the class, she's like, oh, you know what the Greek word for that craftsmanship is? I was like, no. She's like, it's the word poema, where we get the word poem. I was like, interesting. I was like, so we are literally God's poem that he's writing. Like our life.
Spoken into being by the word.
Yeah.
Spoken word.
Spoken word. And so I was thinking, especially in the context of the last class where I was talking about, how we feel like science and math and reason and logic is up here, and we as creative people are usually considered down here. And we have a hard time finding our place in the world. How does a creative person fit in the world and survive and thrive? And so I thought to myself, like the same way that we as artists will work on that book and not care if anybody sees, I think that's the way we have to see ourselves as God's masterpiece. He's working on us as a poem, and if nobody else ever gets us, like, oh, that guy was so a great genius and creative, like he doesn't care, like it's for him. Like he wants to see the masterpiece come into being. He wants that poem of your life to be finished. So if you're supposed to be an artist, and you're supposed to do things that the world usually does not value, you're still supposed to do it because he's writing the poem. So I think that could really help set people who are artists at ease. Like, this is the plan that I had for you. I'm writing the poem. Just let me keep writing the poem. Don't listen to these other people. I don't care if they like my poem. I like my poem. Just be my poem. So I think if we see ourselves as God's masterpiece or poem, we can start to feel like it's okay to be an artist. Not only is it okay, like this is who I was made to be. I don't have to feel sorry or apologize. Like this is who I'm supposed to be.
Well, what's up with that? And I'm talking about myself, writing for myself and not sharing it. That's frustrating.
I think kind of going with what Evan was saying, I think it's a balance. I think for me, I'm more of like you, like the individual. Like I'm like, if I write a poem and you don't like it, I'm sorry. I mean, I wrote it for me and I enjoyed it. If you can't get into it, I can't really do anything about that.
No, I don't share them.
No, but that's all I'm going there.
Oh, okay.
But I think there's a balance too that I think if you really love what you do, it's going to be at a place where it's bubbling out, where you're like, I got to tell people about this.
Absolutely.
Like it should never be, if it's always like, if it's an obligation or like a frustrate, like yeah, you're never going to do it because it's going to be.
No, they're so intimate to me.
Oh,
They're
well.
so close to me.
I mean, I think there's some poems that don't have to be shared with people. Like I have a whole poetry notebook. It's like I hope nobody ever reads this because they'll think I'm the worst person in humanity for the stuff I've written in this book. So I think there is some stuff that can be just for you. It's about you expressing yourself. It's not meant for other people. I mean, maybe there's a time period where you had stuff where you're like, oh, I was telling people, but now I have this sort of internal, going in my cave and just for me.
Well, I think if you don't do it out of fear and out of a sense of, I don't think that I have anything worth sharing that anybody would want to hear, because I think that like if people are, I think that there's some stuff that God gives us for other people.
Yeah.
If you're not sharing because you're afraid of what your perception or how you're going to deliver that, then you need to address that fear, because God has not given us a spirit of fear. And if He's given something to you to give to the world and you're afraid to give it, I think that that's a problem. If you're just saying, I want to write a poem and this is not for anybody, I think that that's fine. But if you have something to give the world and you're not, because I'm not afraid, nobody's going to hear it, I'm not a public speaker, then I think that that's really not in line with the fearless, creative, giving people that God wants us to be. So I think, like Bernard continues saying, it's really the spirit behind it.
Yeah, if you sound like Moses, God's gonna keep at you.
Right.
But God, I'm not perfect. I can't do that.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk more about the balance stuff too. But like I said, I think whenever you're creating out of love, like that problem is never gonna. I mean, there may be some stuff you write, you're still a little like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. But I think ultimately, like if the motivation is always love, like it'll find its way to where it's supposed to be. So then from a more physical standpoint, I think this is just fascinating too. All the unique attributes that each human being has that's only specific to each human being. DNA, nobody else on the whole planet Earth ever existed, existing now, or ever will exist has your DNA. Your iris, your voice print.
Bernard, I heard the chance of identical twins having identical DNA is 1 in 300 million. Yeah, like I said, it's 1 in 300 million, so there could be a small chance.
You always gotta go to the negative,
I
huh?
didn't even see it. I heard 300 million.
I'm like, there's been 300 million twins born in the history of the world.
Guess what? You're still unique.
Probably not.
No, 300
300
million.
million?
And
Yeah,
if you've
not-
ever
not
met a
likely.
group of twins, they're usually completely different.
There's
people.
something,
You know,
Mhm.
I mean,
Even the Oppermans, very different once you get to know them. Oh, moon.
When you know, and
I'm
it's,
glad there's only one whole moon. I'm just messing with you.
But it's fascinating that all this stuff is related to forensics, you know, investigative stuff too. I was just working with a little camp of girls today, and they were doing like, you know, crime scene investigative film that they were making. So, you know, when you die, they can match your teeth records. You're the only one who has your fingerprint. Your handprint is unique. I never knew this till somebody told me. That's why the dogs with the police can find you, because you have your own scent. Like, I didn't know you had your own unique scent. I thought it was just something that dogs could pick up on. I don't know how true this one is. My friend was saying like the government has set up some technology where they can, like, if you're walking on the camera, they can even, your specific gait or walk is kind of unique.
That's why they can tell your foot, the way your foot lands, like your footprint.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we were all wearing the identical shoe, our footprints would look completely different.
Wow.
Because we put our weight down in different places, and like, you know, we have different weights, we have different stride lengths. You know, the way that we land on the inside or outside of our heel. You know, it's gonna be different.
What's frequency? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's something I heard on I was listening to, like, with worship practice, we were listening to some CD about the science of sound and worship, and the guy said he went to the doctor for some type of checkup, and he was near some machine, and the machine blipped, and he was like, what was that? And the doctor's like, oh, that was your frequency. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, each human being has their own frequency.
We're electronic generators, man.
So, like, we all on a spectrum, we all have our own, and I'm sure there's stuff we haven't.
So it's like our magnetic energy or,
Yeah.
or our energy force?
Yep. Which some people would say like your aura, you know? Like some people actually do have the ability to see electronic fields. And so people who say like, you know, we think it's just totally creepy when somebody's like, I can read your aura. Like some of them actually can. Like you can see this energy emanating from us.
Or you could feel, like you say, I can
Yeah.
feel, sense a person.
If you get a good vibe off somebody,
Yeah.
you know, good, like, yeah, it's all,
Yeah.
this, understanding this, like, there's no separation between this idea of physical and spiritual.
Right.
It's the same, and like, spiritual is just unseen physical
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, you know, and it's this
Yeah.
unseen, like, spirit and energy that we have, and
Good way to find
I'm gonna write that down, spiritual is just the unseen physical.
Oh, yeah.
I always feel this very strongly when I like chant upon a group of nurses. They just seem to be very different. Like, you know, like a group of normal people can be smiling, and a group of nurses can be smiling, but the nurses just seem different. Like it's more, there's more goodness or something. I don't really understand, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I had this whole poem about why I was gonna marry a nurse, because they're more like empathetic and
I'm
in
not going to,
tune.
but you can.
I'm just trying to make connections here,
Okay.
Hungma.
Okay.
So frequency, I thought that was very interesting, and I'm sure there's stuff that they haven't even discovered yet. That's probably some unique characteristic about us. So the uniqueness of each person, I was thinking about this today too. I used to get really annoyed when they would have football teams or basketball teams and be like, this team has a combined experience of 300 years of coaching. I was like, you can't just combine people coaching. I was like, if somebody's alive from 1910 to 1990, that's all concurrent. You just got to call it 90 years, you know, or 80 years, whatever that was. But then I was like, oh, I guess it does make sense, because if each person in and of themselves has a unique experience and coaching past, that counts as 15 years and 16 years. But I used to get really annoyed, but now that I see this more, we're all unique unto ourselves, like, okay, that is true. You have 15 plus 15 plus 50. I can't just lump you together and say, oh, you guys were all alive at the same time, so I'm only going to calculate the, you know, the total sum of when you were alive.
Yeah.
And then secondly, like in the area of dating, it's like, you know, you meet somebody and you're like, wow, this person is the most amazing person I've ever met. You know, there's just something about them. I can't put my finger on it, but they're just so unique and so beautiful. And then you meet somebody else and you're like, oh, this person is just so unique and so and I was like, you're not negating the first person. And you're not negating, like, there's just really is something unique about the person, and both are true. And like, I think the only reason that is because God has made each person that specific and that unique, so that when you meet each person, it's like, wow, this person has something I've never had. When you, wow, this, and you think you're just being, you know, flaky, but it's like, no, there really is something unique about each individual. So I think we got to really like instill this idea of being the monopoly, the masterpiece, the DNA plus the fingerprint plus the handprint, like all of these unique, like ultra detailed things about us that nobody else has should make you feel extremely loved for and extremely cared for and extremely valuable. So that when you do create art, all of the sense of I'm not worthy, I'm not much of anything should be like eradicated. Because one's like, what are you saying about the person who designed the masterpiece? I'm really nothing. It's like, really? I mean, if I was God, I'd be pretty upset. I'd be like, actually, I'm pretty a hot artist. I'm really, I'm actually kind of nice when it comes to art. And you're sitting there talking about your,
Nice.
like people think it's,
He's boss.
people think it's okay because they're talking about them. Like it's, oh, I'm just making fun of me. It's like, really? You're like, you don't really own you, you know? He owns you, so you're bought with the price, so you better start talking positively and truthfully about who you are. So then when you create art, like it would just eradicate all of that nonsense of like, oh, I'm not, but my songs aren't good. I don't want to do this. But it's like, really? Really? God's just like, okay, what, did I do something wrong? Did I not make them in my image? He's like, no, you made in my image. All right, let's see. So did people get a chance to read the first chapter?
No.
I did.
Me too. I got my book yesterday in the mail.
I read mine about
I
10
haven't
minutes
even
before
heard
we
of the book
started.
yet.
My book is on hold at the library.
And I read the hard copy.
Yeah, she read my copy. All right, so a couple people read the book. Trying to see if we should go to the. Maybe I'll just keep on the charts then, and we can just double up next week.
I think you talked
Keep
about
going.
people. I think it just went over what you were talking about last week with the left brain
Yeah,
and right brain. So
yeah, we'll just. I'll keep it moving.
Just go for it. We don't need the book.
yeah,
It's got the
It's
guide
worth
and
reading.
his-
No, Daniel Pink is the
Yeah.
man. I love
Yeah.
Daniel Pink.
It's definitely worth reading.
I don't
It's got a lot of correlations, and like I'm even about to connect it now. All right.
Right,
So-
that's connected.
So I'm going to give the disclaimer. I'm going to be teaching a lot of stuff that people might be like, wait, what is he saying? I can't believe he's saying that. So just stick with me over the course of the whole week, because as I go back and fill in stuff, you'll start to see the connections and things will level out. So I've been really fascinated with this idea over the past year about capital G God and capital C creator God. And then we're made in his image, so we're lowercase g gods, we're lowercase c creators. Some people have trouble with that, but I'm not saying we are God. I'm saying we're made in the image of God. We are miniature gods, or as I used to say it, M-A-N-Y gods, M-I-N-I gods, mini gods, mini gods. So the first thing I want to talk about is holy. The misunderstanding. I have a friend at church who was saying, you know, most people think holy means don't smoke, don't drink, don't curse, don't do these things, blah, 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 blah. He says, actually the word holy means set apart, unlike, completely other than, no comparison, original, like one of a kind, not a copy, uncommon. And I think that word really is a good one, uncommon.
Yeah.
So this guy Joseph Prince, who I watch a lot, who I recommend everybody should watch.
Joseph Prince, my countryman.
Yeah, Singapore. He will change your life. But he was saying he was changing the perspective of. He said, okay, think of the idea of common and uncommon. He said, you know, in a recession, it's common to not have money. It's common for people to be sick. It's common for people to not have good relationships. So he's like, if you're holy, like you are uncommon. You have thriving relationships. You have health. You have prosperity. You are doing well. So I think changing the perception of what people consider holy is one thing we have to do. Secondly, the whole idea of, I put here creators versus the idea of can't do, not allowed to. So using that new definition of holy, and especially being a creator, I think we need to stop like, oh, we're not allowed to do this, and we're not allowed, we shouldn't, like the image of a creator is someone who is constantly thinking about what are we building, what are we increasing, what are we making, what are we progressing, and it's not thinking about what we aren't doing. And the interesting thing Joseph Prince said that I thought was really good, he said if you look back at, you know, Genesis, Adam and Eve, the garden, he's like, what was the one thing that Adam and Eve were told not to eat? Or they were told to focus on what they weren't allowed to do. Prohibitive mentality, he called it. Like, are you not supposed to eat that tree? Yeah, focus on that one thing that you're not allowed to do. Versus, I like how this other guy explained it. He said, where God was like, you may freely eat. See all that to the east, all that to the west, all to the south, the north, that's all yours. So rather than focusing on the abundance and overflowing and what they were able to do, they were focused on this one kind of tunnel vision concept that they were not allowed to do.
Taking stuff for granted.
Yeah, and I think that mentality has gone from point A all the way up to present day, where people are always talking about what they can't do, what they're not allowed to do. I shouldn't be having fun at work. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be following my dreams. I can't. I'm not. Like, everything is about can't, not, shouldn't, prohibition.
Hey Bernard, we figured this out the other day that when somebody says you should or shouldn't do something, you just got should on.
That is so fantastic. Oh my god.
That's correct.
I've never heard that one.
Wow.
I think you could use that. I'm going to butcher it.
You gotta bring a book to this one. It's like 5 different little things I got here.
That's why we got the MP3s. It's just listen. But I remember one time I was listening to this message about, I guess Joshua and Caleb and how they went into the land. It was like, oh, we can surely take this. And then they came back and other people was like, nah, we can't do this. And they called it an evil report. And I just thought it was fascinating how the idea of can't was to God evil. Like, I never had that perception, like, oh, what do you mean can't? Like, we can't do stuff. It's just the way it is. It's like, no, I'm God. Like, I can do anything. Like, you know who you're talking to? You're talking to the can person. Like, the person who is all things. So I just think it's interesting that even the idea of failure in our vocabulary is something that needs to be eradicated. Like, something we just let other people say, like, oh yeah, we can't, yeah, it's never gonna work. Is like, God is like, I don't even hear those words. They like go in my ear. So I drew this little diagram of the one tree, like focused. And I'll probably use these two little symbols later versus the more open, can eat from every tree. And I tried to, if you guys read the first chapter, I tried to connect what Pink was talking about. So he's saying, our left brain is more sequential and linear, and our right brain can multitask, put faces and emotions together. So I just made that connection. You're like, the idea of can't and not is more sort of sequential and focused. And the idea of, what you may and are allowed to do is more open and multi. So I was just making that connection with the book. Continue on. I'm kind of going off track just to bring you back. So right here I have this idea of sin definition. And this is something else Joseph Prince said that I thought was interesting. He said, ask people to tell you their definition of sin. And they will probably do a laundry list of detail of things. And he said, actually, if you read Romans, it says, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. He said, sin is falling short of glory. And I was like, oh, interesting. It's not just this moral component. This is also this component of things working. So he's like, if you are unhealthy, like that's falling short of glory. If you are not prosperous, you're falling. So I just thought, now my whole way of looking at life is like, oh, I'm supposed to be reflecting an image of a glorious God. Like everything I do is supposed to be glorious. If I'm poor and sick and not working, my relationship's out. If things are unhealthy and broken, like I'm not reflecting the gloriousness. So I kind of like to connect that back to the uncommon. The idea that everybody else, they can be doing that, and they can be sort of following the trends of the way things seem to go, but we're supposed to be glorious, uncommon. We're supposed to be set apart, completely unique. I guess I should explain this part better too up here. So the idea of set apart, I thought this was fascinating, going back to the DNA, Monopoly masterpiece. Like, we're so uniquely and acutely made the same way God is. Like, he is so removed, transcendent. He's like, I'm completely not you. Like, there's no comparison to me. I'm just incomparable. You can't say God is like this. Like, you can try, but it's just a way so you can sort of get a grasp, but I'm really not any of those things. I'm completely different. In that same way, we're made in his image. All that DNA and voice print and fingerprint, we're completely different than anyone else on the planet. Like, we're that unique and specific that you can say, yeah, I'm wholly, completely other than you in that sense. So I think it's just interesting how we're made in that image. So back to the sin definition, I said it's moral plus order. So I kind of broke that down into, well, let me see if I keep going on and come back. Well, I've been more fascinated with this idea of how creativity fits in with the whole picture of the world in the fall, and how, you just look around and the sort of beauty and aesthetic of planet Earth, we've kind of screwed up. Like, I used to never really think about landfills and garbage, but now I'm like, wow, we're really destroying the sort of creativity and artistry of the planet. And it's out of order. It's, it's not glorious. So I guess I was trying to connect, the idea of sin being moral plus order. It's not just, oh, you did the wrong thing. It's like, you did the wrong thing, and it's not working on your behalf. Like, it's more than just you doing the wrong things. Like, this thing is broken. It should be benefiting you. And so I guess I tried to go to the idea of like when a vending machine is broken, what do we call it? Out of order. Like, we just spew those words out because it's, a phrase, but that means one component didn't work when it was supposed to, and it worked out of sequence. So we got to put things back into order to make them beautiful. And I think they're like, you look at how these chairs are arranged or how the place is arranged. The order and the aesthetic are dependent on one another. Like, the way you put chairs in an intentional, ordered way is what contributes to the aesthetic of it. But the whole reason you like that is not because of the order, you like the aesthetic. So, the two play off each other. And I like, you guys should probably read the Artist Way book too, but she calls creativity good, orderly direction. And I think all those words are really good. It's good, it's in order, and then it's going towards a purposeful direction. Let's see. I think that's it on that side. There was something else about this. I can't remember what I wanted to say. Maybe it'll come back. Okay, so capital C creator, lowercase c creator. This relates back to the first chart of subjectivity and creativity. And taking the word subjectivity and breaking it to the word subject, and the idea of there's something below you or something that you rule over. So the way I like to describe this, and I've been describing the past years, as creative people, we're made in the image of God. Here's my other chart. Made in the image of God. He's up here. He creates us. You can insert the creator thing there too. So pretty much we're copying him or imitating him. And so, in a sense, we have our own little universe that we're in charge of. Now, for him, it's planets, stars, nebulas, galaxies, atoms, it's all this stuff. For us, it's like painting, art, poetry, music, family, life, career, jobs. And the thing that I like to say is, going to connect with some of the ideas of how artists feel insecurity. It's like, as a creator, you are the god of your little universe. And if somebody comes into your universe and criticizes you, you can respectfully tell them to leave your universe. Because this is the place that I've created, this is the viewpoint that I have, and if I come into your universe, I'm going to respect your laws and your rules. And if you don't like them, or if I don't like them, I can leave. I can choose to come and go from your universe. And the way I say it is like, if somebody comes into my world and I have poetry, I have art, I have music, and I have all these things, to me, I equate that with gravity. I'm like, this is how gravity works in my universe. Like, maybe it doesn't work that way in your universe, but this is gravity here. And if you want to be on this universe, you better learn how to walk with gravity, because this is how it works. And I think there's a difference between, connected to that, I think there's a difference between technical and personal perception. So we were talking earlier about, presenting your work for an audience. And I think people get confused with these two. And this is kind of talking, with Chateau and some of the stuff you were saying. Like, for me as a filmmaker, when I make a film and somebody watches it and they say, this scene was unclear. That's a difference between them saying, oh, well, you should have made this character that, and you should have wrote it this way. There's two different things. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a sense of technical clarity if I say, well, in this scene, the two people were supposed to fall in love, and then 10 people come back and say, well, I thought they were just friends. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between their personal reaction to what I've done and the technical way in which I've constructed it. And I think people get tied up too much into what people think about what they've created. If it's a technical thing, you should maybe listen to them and say, okay, yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll try to work on it. But if they just have this personal opinion, oh, you should have done this, I should have done, like, you don't have to listen to that. Like, this is your universe. Now, if that part kind of maybe added to the clarity of it, then maybe you should consider it. But ultimately, you have autonomy and complete, utter control and say so in your creative universe. And I think a lot of people kind of got to get that, confidence and like, hey, this is my viewpoint, this is my subjective, my creative way, and I'm not going to change it to yours. Like, that's why we have you. That's why the world has your viewpoint, so we can see that side. And if you want to portray that side, you go write a movie. Like, you go write a book. You go write a song. But I've written the thing that I want to write. Why doesn't that work with her?
My universe doesn't work. You'll be like, what?
How about you in this world?
Right. I'm just playing. I'm just thinking about
Well, we're going to get into that too, the whole idea of parents and children and how this all works.
What, today?
Not today. I know you want to get to that.
No, I'm tired.
All right, yeah, we're getting there. This is the last chart that we'll do for the night. So I have here, I'm going to be doing a lot of this over the course, taking one word or phrase and then like branching off and getting the two meanings from it. So here I have the phrase, no one can tell you what to do. And as I just explained, on one hand, that means you are autonomous, you're free, no one rules over you in your creative universe. No one can tell you what to do, period. On the other hand, I have it from I'll use the quote that I read to explain it. There's this book called The Truth About Work. And I like this guy said. He said, no one on this planet Earth can tell us what you're supposed to do with your life except for you. The rest of us can simply come alongside you and support you and say, what do you need from us to help to make this come true? But what's happened, what I think is connected to some of the stuff from last week is the idea of, students just being given the answer and then they regurgitate it and the teacher says, good job. A lot of people are waiting to be told what to do. They're waiting for an answer, waiting for a destiny, waiting for a purpose. Or that's not how God operates. My friend Dan Burt, one time, he said, could you imagine if God looked around and said to the other gods, hey guys, do you think I should make a universe and a planet? Is that a good idea? Okay. It's like, if God is in control of himself. He has his own thoughts, his own desires, his own creativity. He's not waiting for somebody to tell him when to start. And we're made in his image. Like, we're not waiting for people to tell us, oh, you wanna be an artist? Yeah, you should do that. Like, there's a difference between encouragement and people helping you and guiding you. But I think a lot of people are waiting. They're just sitting there waiting for it to fall in their head. What am I supposed to do with my life? It's like, and no one can tell you what to do because no one is inside your head. No one knows your brain or your consciousness. Only you know what you want to do and can tell us. Let's see what else. So I put here, don't wait, create. Hung one. Oh yeah.
Well, I have a quick question about that.
Yeah.
As I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Currently. To what extent should you just go with what you feel, who you feel like you are? In what sense should you wait, from your perspective, wait on God in that sense, or should you always be seeking? You understand what I mean? Like, I think that there's one thing to be like, I feel like I should be doing this, I'm going to go do it. And to what extent do we have that conversation with God or waiting on God for some kind of, because I'm never waiting on people to tell me what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm usually waiting to see, I know what I want to do, but I want to make sure what I want to do is in line with what God wants me to do.
Yeah.
And so I just was wanting your perspective on how you wrestle with those, specifically as a Christian, how you wrestle with, a lot of my wants and desires aren't godly. I mean, they're not necessarily bad, but you can do a lot of things that be like, I purpose you for this, and, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that comes to mind. It was funny. I was watching Joseph Prince this morning. He was talking about that idea
Who
of
is he? I need to go watch
Singapore,
that.
man. Watch him. I'm serious.
Well, his church was called a cult till maybe about 10 years ago.
Whatever. He's amazing.
But you were watching
watch
this
him on
morning.
Yeah. So he was talking about that idea of. Well, he was talking about it in a lot of different contexts, and one specifically was dating. He was like, he's like, so many people have this. They hear one person who's like, oh yes, I walked into the church and God said, that's your wife. And it's like, he said, that's like the exception and not the rule. He said, a lot of people are trying to do that. He said, a lot of times it's this idea of like, okay, well, let's try this out. Let's like carefully kind of try it out and see what happens and be like, okay, it didn't seem to work. But he was talking about the idea of being, like we have, like as Christians, we have this backwards, like the idea of, oh, if you feel peace, then go forward. He's like, so you're saying God should let us not feel peace all the time? He's like, God leads more by like stopping of peace than he does by peace. Like you should feel peace continually, and then when you don't feel peace, it's like, wait, maybe I should hold up.
Right.
So that's
Right, or change.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the absence of peace sometimes that motivates you to where God wants you to be.
That's
Well, the follow your heart thing, I mean, God says, I'll create in you a new heart, a clean heart. But it also says the heart is, deceitful and wicked above all things,
So you're
And
like,
so-
which one is it?
I'm like, I'm just gonna follow my heart.
Yeah.
Then that doesn't. Where's that gonna get me?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out
Yeah.
that very thing. I feel like in my life.
I think it's the unanswerable question, though.
That's a dilemma of Christianity.
Yeah.
I think it's a little in life.
Well,
But it's this relationship.
Yeah.
That's where the relationship aspect of
You know?
with God.
But it's
Like, you
still
can
the
wait on him
dilemma
going
of
forward.
Christianity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
I don't know that it can really.
I think that what Shatone is saying is kind of true. She's saying it's the dilemma of Christianity. I
That's
think
the dilemma of Christianity. That's the dilemma. Is it's just like any relationship. Um, it's always evolving and changing, and you always have to find out, are you okay? What's on your mind? How you doing? It's sort of like that with God too, where it's just so hard to.
What's helped me is a perspective of co-creating with him.
That's good.
I always thought, oh God, wait for me, or I need to hear from, but no, he wants to co-create, meaning we're both equals. I mean, be ye holy, for I am holy. He's telling us, it's a co-creation, I think, looking at it at the same level. He loves
Co-authoring the
me,
story.
I love him, And here's another quote I just thought is, he will not do for you what you must do. It's so, talk about that. He will not do for you what you must do. If you want to create.
But it's
I
still
mean, it's-
conflicting.
Yeah.
It's still a dilemma. Because, you said something that goes against that before. So that's that whole thing of that struggle, that nature of Joseph that's in us, that struggles with the angel until we're changed. So I think that's the part that when we finally struggle with the angel and get our hip thrown out of joint, meaning that the things that God needs to remove or change in us have happened,
Yeah.
then we have a peace about which direction he wants us to go. And then also, sometimes it's outside of us. Sometimes it's doors that open that we're surprised at,
Or just people saying things,
Yeah, people
I mean,
witnessing.
somebody can just come
and
right
that
up to you.
witness, Yeah.
Like the woman who used to do flowers at Walmart. She'd come up to me, I'd be in prayer, all night about something. And she'd come up to me the next day, she's like, Evan, I woke up this morning, word from the Lord. He says this. and she had no idea.
You're like, boom.
No idea what I was praying about.
Like the woman in Walmart? That's
Oh man, she was one of the godliest women I ever met in my life. She said, I was praying this morning, Spirit says, I don't know what this means, but the Spirit said this for you. And I was like,
And
Man,
that's an obedient
that was
person.
great.
Because like I said, sometimes it comes from outside
Yeah,
of you.
yeah.
And it bears witness with your spirit.
Yeah.
You already know.
Mhm.
And that's how you test it.
Mhm.
Because you already know. It's so many, there's so
Yes,
many
that's very
facets and ways that he does it, that he leads us.
And we can either see that as an adventure or we can be scared.
Yep, that's what I was about to say.
And I think it's again,
That's
we can
being
either,
co-creating, you mean?
yeah, you can see co-creating as like, oh, but what if I'm okay, but is this okay? What am I doing? Oh, I don't know. You know, we can still enter into this whole relationship with a spirit of fear,
Right.
but and not in this way that like God is releasing us
Yeah.
to be and to do, you know. And I think just seeing it as an adventure, like, and you know what? I might even get it wrong at some point. Okay, big deal. Like the world is not going to collapse, and God is not going to disown me, you know, because I came to Charlottesville to take this mission.
She's mad.
Yeah.
I want everything laid out.
Sometimes I want freedom, and sometimes, but I just need to know what you want me to do.
You know,
I don't want to
what
read
I
it right
sense,
now.
though? I sense that because you've got so many wonderful ideas that you feel like, you know, you have to hold yourself back sometimes. It's like, wait a minute, you're like ready to go and you're like, wait a minute, God, is that you? Or is that me? You know, because you have a very strong creative force about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's wonderful too,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, I think
I'm always ahead of myself.
well, the thing he was saying this morning too, he was saying like, you know, people are like looking for this exterior, and he's like, if the desire's in your heart, like it's probably God. Like, but yeah, then you get to the whole thing. It's like, well, my desires are this and that. But I think if it's lined up with the Word, and you know, like there was this article that came out a few weeks ago about, you know, Christians in the arts in Seville, and they quoted, I guess it was Augustine.
Yeah.
They said, you know, love God and do what you want. And I think that's a really good quote. It's like, set you
That's
free.
a
It's
good
like,
one.
okay, is
Love
this
God, do what you
conflicting with loving God? All right,
Yeah.
it's not. Let's go on. And if it works out, then, well, maybe that was what. But if it doesn't, well, I'll try again.
And sometimes God does step right in and say, you know what? Hey, check it out. You're gonna do this.
Yeah.
You know, but in absence of that, you know.
And I think, like what Evan was saying about the adventure idea, like I always think of the Indiana Jones movie where it's like, he's got a step, and it's not until he steps that the step appears. It's not like, okay, there's your step. Now,
That's what you're talking about, faith.
I mean, that's the thing, like,
Now you're talking about
faith
faith.
answer.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah,
that's
faith
what, I
stuff.
feel like that's what faith is. You have to step out
Yeah,
and not
exactly.
know whether that stuff's gonna be there. I mean, you hope and you pray. I mean, it shows up and you're just like, man, it's not, who knows? It's just a blackness under
How the heck
there.
can you even fail though, Ebony? I mean, like anything you do.
I'm a perfectionist, so I'm always like, I wanna be in line with what God wants me to do. I don't wanna veer from that. And so it's not like I wanna do this right. It's like, you know, I feel like we have 10 million things to do but one life. And I feel like I always want to do my highest and my best with what God has given me. And so I want to be like, okay, this is the best that you have for me, or at this point. You know,
And that's a good question.
And I want to be doing that
That's a
as
really good
opposed
question.
to like, I could be doing 2 million other things, but I want to be like doing, you know, what He's called me to do, to be who He's called me to be, and not ever settle for that. You know, He may want me to do something less than what I want, but I don't think ever doing what He wants me to do is settling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's stuck out to me is just conversations with people the past couple of years, and it relates to a lot of the older charts about that linear way of look. Like we forget that everything is relation. And it's like we want the rules, we want the laws, we want the plans. Give me my plan. Okay, step one. Actually, the difference between, you know, creating a universe. So you got box one. This guy's like, this is gonna be easy. You know, prefab universe, easy to assemble kit. 3 easy steps. Easy, no work. Just dump out your universe, completed for you. Whereas this guy is like, oh, I can't wait to see what I'm gonna come up with. And it says, build your own universe, a challenge and a fun puzzle inside. You decide what to do. Hard, but not too hard. Easy, but not too easy. And it's like, you're always gonna, the whole idea is growth too. You know, it's like, you got, like, if you don't step out, you're not gonna literally stretch yourself. So I think, you know, Richard co-creating and relationships, like you're in a relationship with God. It's like, you know, it's like any other relationship. You guys, it's an adventure. You get in the car, let's go. It's not like, what are we gonna do? Or we're gonna be at Texas at 5. It's like, it's boring. God's like, just see what's gonna happen. You figure it out when we go. Go to the land which I will show you.
Yeah.
And I'll let you. And by the way, I'll let you know when you're there. I'm not telling you. I'm not giving you directions with an end point. You go. I'll let you know when to stop. Sort of thing.
The robots seem to me like they just live in a physical world. They don't understand their spiritual aspect of themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last couple things, since we're about at the wrap-up point. In that same book, well, first I said, as if we're all lowercase g gods, how can one god of a universe tell another what to do with his universe or her universe? The last thing I have on here, the guy said in the Truth About Work book, I thought was interesting. He was talking about some company, and this company had made a product. I might be telling the story wrong. A company made a product, and then the product, kind of ran its course. So they're like, okay, we need to come up with something new. So then they got all these people together, and they had a focus group to see if it was going to work. And this guy said, did Thomas Edison have a focus group? He's like, no, this dude just, came up with inventions. He's like, this is what we need to do. We need to, what is your heart pull towards? I think that's this guy was at a graduation for high school, and this guy said, God has given you the passions and the talents within you to do what he wants you to do. So I think one answer is what am I passionate about, and what am I good at, and how do those two come together, and you'll start to kind of see maybe some direction. But I like that idea of, did Thomas Edison or did Einstein go to people and say, hey guys, what do you think about this E equals MC square idea? Does it look like a good? It's like, nah, he was just fascinated and curiosity and the unknown. It's like, what's out there? I'm just gonna see where it takes me, and then look. I mean, Daniel was telling me about the story. So he just submitted the paper, and then the magazine was like, yeah, we don't have time for this. And then by chance, some other dude found it and was like, oh, this is brilliant. And then history changed forever. So I think people just going after where they feel that inclination, what God has put. I think what we talked about last time, curiosity. What makes you curious? What makes your brain say, I need to search that out. I need to go after that. I can't just sit here. So I think that can be some helpful things. So we'll wrap it up there for tonight. Next week we'll